I'm often asked, what disclosures do I need to make when selling my home in Richmond? Well, here's the truth. Paperwork mistakes do not usually cost Richmond sellers money because they were dishonest. They cost money because sellers did not know what they were required to disclose, or they've guessed when they should have been precise. Disclosures are one of those topics most people do not think about until they are already under contract and the pressure's on. Today I'm breaking down what disclosures you need to make when selling your home in Richmond, what not to guess on, what a material defect really means, and how to protect yourself from delays, renegotiations, or post-closing headaches. This is not about legal jargon. It's about knowing what is expected so you can sell with confidence. Let's start with a big picture because Virginia works differently than many other states. Virginia is what's called a buyer beware state. That means sellers are not required to disclose every detail about their home the way sellers are in some other parts of the country. But there are still specific disclosures you must provide. And there are situations where silence, half answers, or misrepresentation can absolutely create problems. First key document is the residential property disclosure statement. This is the form many sellers recognize, and it is required in most residential sales in Virginia. Here's what surprises people. This document does not require you to list everything that is wrong with your home. Instead, it states the buyer has the responsibility to investigate the condition of the property. That is the buyer beware principle. But buyer beware does not mean you can hide known material facts or answer questions in a way that is misleading. This is where people get tripped up. So let's define the key term. What is a material defect? A material defect is something that could affect the value of the property or influence a buyer's decision to purchase. In plain English, it's the kind of issue where a reasonable buyer would say, I would want to know that before I commit. Common examples include water intrusion, whether it's happening now or happened in the past, roof problems or major repairs, foundation or structural issues, electrical or plumbing defects, mold that required remediation, termite damage, or structural damage. Now here's a key thing many sellers do not realize. Even if an issue was repaired, it can still be considered a material fact. For example, if your basement flooded years ago and you installed a drainage system to fix it, that is something we should talk through carefully. Not because it's a deal breaker, but because transparency protects you. The goal is to be accurate, not dramatic. Now let's talk about lead-based paint, because this one is non-negotiable. If your home was built before 1978, federal law requires you to provide a lead-based paint disclosure. No exceptions. Even if you renovate it, even if you think it was removed, even if you believe it's probably fine, this disclosure must be signed, acknowledged, and delivered on time. Missing it can delay closing or give buyers rights they would not otherwise have. It is one of the most common last-minute scrambles that I see, and one of the easiest to avoid if we handle it early. Next, HOA and condo documents. If your property is part of a homeowners association or a condo association, you're required to provide resale disclosure documents. These include things like bylaws, budgets, rules, and financial statements. The key detail is that these documents take time to order, and buyers typically have a review period once they receive them. Now, if you wait until you're under contract to request them, you can delay closing or give buyers an easy out. Smart sellers order HOA documents early so there's no rush and no surprises. If this is helpful so far and you want more no-fluff tips on selling smarter in Richmond, hit subscribe right now. I post new videos every week designed to save sellers time, money, and stress. Now let's talk about mechanical systems and past issues, because this is where honesty really matters. You're not required to inspect your home before selling. You're not required to guarantee perfection. But if you know about an issue and you're asked directly, you must answer truthfully. That includes roof leaks, HVAC problems, plumbing backups, or electrical issues you've dealt with in the past. And here's a good rule of thumb. If you paid someone to fix it It's probably something we should review and be prepared to describe accurately if asked. Now, once had a seller say, well, it only leaks when it rains sideways. Well, buyers do not love that explanation. Clarity matters. Now, stigmatized properties. In Virginia, sellers are not required to disclose things like prior deaths in the home, crimes, or paranormal activity. However, if a buyer asks you directly about something and you choose to answer, you cannot lie or misrepresent facts. If you're unsure, the safest path is to keep things factual and let your agent guide you. Next, environmental issues. If you know about underground storage tanks, prior environmental hazards, or contamination issues, those can be material facts. Again, this is not about guessing. It's about being honest with known information. So let's talk about the biggest mistakes I see sellers make. And this is the warning I want you to remember. The biggest mistake is assuming that if a problem was fixed, it no longer matters. Or assuming that if you do not say anything, it'll never come up. Here's the truth. Most issues come out during inspections. Most buyers ask questions. And almost everything has a paper trail. Trying to hide something almost always leads to bigger problems later. So what happens if you do not disclose? Well, if a buyer discovers after closing that you knew about a material defect and failed to disclose it, especially if they asked about it, you could be held responsible. That could mean legal action, financial damages, paying for repairs after the sale, and stress long after you thought the transaction was over. No seller wants to deal with that, and my job is to make sure you never have to. Now, sellers can also get into trouble by doing the opposite, which is over-disclosing. Volunteering speculation can be just as risky as hiding information, saying things like, I think the foundation might shift one day, or I heard homes on this street have issues, creates unnecessary fear and confusion. Stick to facts, not opinions, not rumors. Facts protect you. That leads to the smart approach to disclosures, and this is how I handle it with my sellers. We slow down, we talk through the property honestly. We look at past repairs, invoices, and known issues. We decide how to disclose things accurately and properly. The goal is not to overshare or scare buyers. The goal is to be clear, truthful, and protected. Handled correctly, disclosures actually build trust and often make negotiations smoother. When buyers feel informed and respected, they negotiate less aggressively and move forward with fewer concerns. Now let's talk about timing. Disclosures must be delivered properly and on time. Missing a disclosure or delivering it late can give buyers extra rights, including the right to cancel, even if everything else is going smoothly. That's why we handle disclosures early, thoroughly, and correctly. It's not glamorous, but it protects your deal. Now let's recap. Virginia is a buyer beware state, but honesty still matters. You must provide the residential property disclosure statement. Lead-based paint disclosures are required for homes built before 1978. HOA resale documents are mandatory and take time to order. Material defects are issues that can affect value or a buyer's decision. And even repaired issues can be material facts. Trying to hide something usually backfires. Oversharing opinions can also create problems. Timing and proper delivery matter just as much as accuracy. Now, if you're thinking about selling and want help navigating disclosures the right way, let's talk. I will guide you through what applies to your home, how to handle it properly, how to answer buyer questions, how to document repairs, and how to protect yourself before, during, and after closing. Don't miss next week's video, the inspection phase explained for Richmond sellers, what really matters and what does not. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it, and in the comments, tell me, what part of selling worries you the most? Paperwork, pricing, or the unknowns you cannot control? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.